Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. Our county manager is on his way, but he said, let's go ahead and get the ball rolling. So I want to welcome everyone to the leadership team meeting. We haven't had one where we could actually eyeball to eyeball, so it's really nice to see everybody here today. We do have a few things to cover. We're not going to be taking your whole afternoon, but first up we have Paul Wolterbeck, and he is going to talk about our annual report.
Okay, I guess since I'm this far up, I'll go ahead and drop the mask for a minute. Anyway, I'm sure you've all seen this and are familiar with it. If anybody isn't, I've got a box of them. I'd be happy to give you some. And if you need any extras for your departments or offices, let me know. Real happy with how this came out last year, and I believe we're going to be doing another one. So what I wanted to do was just give kind of a quick reminder on how the process works, and to thank those of you in offices and departments who wrote kind of nice reports and sent some good photographs that went with this. Is anybody not familiar with this? Has anybody not seen it? Anybody show hands? Okay, good. That shows that we got it out there. That should be the case in the communities too. We produced enough copies of this that it was both inserted in the papers, North and South Gila County, and also mailed out to pretty much every deliverable address we could get. So if people haven't seen one, that's a surprise. We've also got stacks of them in different offices. We're going to be doing that again. Probably got several months lead time on this. But if you would, start to give some thought to accomplishments over the past year so we can make your department shine. And photographs you might have. We'd love to get some good photographs of you and your staff in action. Working with clients, any kind of pictures that help tell the story of what your office or your department does. If you need any assistance on preparing it, let me know. We're basically usually looking for anywhere from a paragraph or a couple of paragraphs to a page of content. You can look at the current edition for different ideas on how some departments represented what they do. We wound up having to pull some of the reports apart and use bits and pieces as a way to integrate this magazine with the strategic plan and to illustrate the different principles of the strategic plan and accomplishments. I'm happy with how it came out. I hope everybody else is. And if you have any other feedback on it, let me know. But this is just a sort of early heads up that we will be working on another one. And please take another look at it and maybe either flex your creative writing skills or find someone in your department who might enjoy writing up something for us. And they can send that directly to me. Anybody have any questions while I'm up? Okay. Again, I've got a box of them right here. If anybody wants a copy, I'll be happy to distribute some today. And if you need more, we've got a few more boxes at the office. So. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. So I'm going to be dual-handed because I have a Mr. Microphone. You guys, it's dangerous that you gave me a microphone. But I also have the PowerPoint that we handed out to you today. Did anybody not sign the sign-in sheet? Awesome. Thank you. So I wanted to get back to everybody and talk about our 2019 audit and the findings that came with the audit. That it seems like the state auditors, we probably will never have an audit where we don't have a finding. But the findings are really for us to take a look at our processes and our policies and make sure that we're either need to improve them, follow them, provide more documentation. So this is just an education for everybody here and on YouTube. And then our commitment as the finance department is to get back, ask you to invite us to your staff meetings and that so we can get with your folks that work with these policies and the documents to make sure that we eliminate some of these findings in the future. So I'm going to go through some of the findings that came out. Actually, for 2019, I think we eliminated at least 5 findings, which is good. That means that the corrective action that we said we were going to do, we've done. But we still have a little ways to go. And so, travel policy. And I'm not going to read this word for word. You guys can do that. But the auditors took a look at our travel policy and basically said there were some things about our travel policy that we were not following. And we've crafted the travel policy to allow that in some situations, if you have an exception and it's legitimate business purpose, say you have somebody that has some kind of a medical condition that you have to make an allowance for, as long as we document that and include that with the travel documents and you have it approved, then that should be a no problem in an audit because we've documented that need. So basically, that was part of this finding. We also had some room upgrades that included food that saved the county some significant money. Another exception to the policy just has to be documented. So instead of getting per diem, meals were part of, incorporated in that room rate. So like I said, we have flexibility language in our policy. The key is document, 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 and include with your travel documents. Credit card purchases. Over the last couple of years, I can tell you the audit team from the state has really cracked down on credit card purchases, what we do with them. And like in our case, we have a tool called Works, where you go in and you describe the business purpose or the need, why you used your credit card. They want us to be a little more detailed in our description of what the business purpose, so they can take a look at those charges and ensure that we are indeed using our credit cards for those purposes. I'll tattletale a little bit on another county. They had a finding in 2019 for a county north of us where their health director inappropriately used their credit card and chalked up a whole bunch of charges for personal use. That's really when the auditors are looking at our credit card charges, they're looking for things like that, misuse. So if we minimize our description of the business purpose, that's kind of like a red flag for them to dig deeper. So our ask for you is when you are making credit card purchases, make sure that you can read that description in Works and understand it really is a legitimate business purpose. So I say follow the policies. We do have policies out there. Our procurement policy. This is one that comes up from time to time. People will email me and our finance folks and say, well, you know, I only could get one quote. Is that good enough? No, you need to look at the policy. If you're in a position where you're going to be spending taxpayer dollars, the policy really is there so you can pay attention and follow the guidelines in that policy to make sure we're doing procurements in the correct way. There are some caveats to that. Emergency purchases in the realm of COVID, to get PPE as quickly as possible. That was one of those, I gotta have it today. We only have like one quote, two quotes. The board had declared an emergency. Okay, we've got a legitimate business purpose, and we documented that in writing, so it goes with those kind of purchases. But when I have somebody come up and say, you know, I only had one person give me a quote for a vehicle, yeah, that's not really gonna fly. Because I look at that and I say, is there other places on the planet that would sell a vehicle? The answer is yes. So we need to make sure that we're following our procurement policies. So public bids, they go out to the public. If we get one bid back after it's been advertised and nobody else has bid, then as long as it's responsive and responsible, we can take that to the Board of Supervisors and ask them to approve a contract with that vendor. If we go out just for like 3 written quotes, we really need 3 written quotes because we're not blasting it out to the world, we're sending it out to a select group of vendors. So I hope there's a distinction there and you understand what that is. If you or your staff needs clarification on these policies, we're more than happy to clarify that. But just wanted to go over those couple things. And again, you're going to hear the word documentation. You know, if it's a single source, it's the only one that we can get something from, it needs to be written in the form of documentation. We also have a piece when we're buying stuff, and it has to do mostly with federal grants, but we have to look to see if any of the vendors that we use have been an excluded party. And that means that the federal government is no longer going to do business with these companies because they did something in violation of federal regulations. So when you buy things, our staff, Stephanie, Donna, and Betty, actually go out to the excluded party list to verify whether or not that vendor is on that list. If they're not, then we document it and we show, like I said, documentation. We have a piece of paper that said they did this. So that's to keep us compliant with all those federal grants. We even go further than that. We do that with just about every vendor that we do business with. So on the off chance that they pull a file and say, did you check this vendor? These guys are doing it. Does anybody have any question about the procurement policy? Okay. Credit card policy, we have that in place really to make sure that we are following some kind of policy that says what's the business purpose for the use of a credit card. And in a lot of cases, we use it for procurement. The use of a credit card does not take the place of the procurement policy. So if you're using a credit card to pay for items or services or anything like that, you still should be referring back to the procurement policy. Make sure that you're following that policy. The credit card is really the only it's a payment method. It's no different than going through accounts payable so we can cut a check. It's a payment vehicle. And so you have to have sufficient information when you're using your credit card that it is for a legitimate business purpose. The next policy that I have is the capital asset policy. That policy dictates at what level we have to report whether it's a tangible capital asset like a building, a vehicle, or is it painting a fuel tank. We have to take a look at that, and I'll pick on Amber. Poor Amber has been taking all your purchases over the year and combing through them to make sure that we've identified them if they're capital, because there's a depreciation that goes along with that the lady that compiles our financial statements, we have to provide that information to her. We have to tell her what we've added throughout the year, what we've retired throughout the year, what's gone missing, and construction in progress. So that way we make sure that we're reporting those dollars correctly on our financial statements. So the capital asset policy will give you, if you're unsure whether or not something is a capital item, you can take a look at the policy. There's a schedule in there that gives you an idea if it's capital or not. If you still have questions, feel free to reach out to any one of us in finance, and we'll help walk you through whether it's capital or not. So I know I'm going through these really quick. I'm going to send out an email after this meeting that has a link to each one of these policies. So that way you'll have them if you need to print them off for your staff, but you'll have them in one handy-dandy little place that you can refer back to. So in travel policy audit findings, the meal per diems, we do have a schedule in the policy that per day, when you're in travel status, your meals are $10 for breakfast, $15 for lunch, $25 for dinner. And we know that in some states, if you went back to Washington, D.C., you probably can't buy a muffin for $10. But there are exceptions, like I said, to the travel policy. If you know this in advance and you've filled out your travel form, then you can document that you need additional per diem money because that's not going to cover it. If you just go off and spend it and you don't have any documentation, we're going to come back and ask for reimbursement. So putting that out there, we understand that in some locales you know, the meals may be more expensive, so please be mindful of that. And the same with your folks. Be mindful when they travel. If we don't want anybody to get in trouble spending more than they should for per diem. So a little bit of travel planning ahead of time is very helpful. So all exceptions must be approved by the elected official or department director in writing. The next document, and this is going to be in the email to you because it's like a 36-page document. It is actually the Arizona State per diem rates. The page that we use is page 6, and it's the hotel rates. They identify in there how much we should be paying for a hotel. And it's by state, by city. If the city isn't listed, it gives you a locale. We need to be looking at that when you're planning your trip. And when you're booking your hotels, you need to make sure that you're asking for the state rate, or you're documenting that there was no hotel available that would give you the rate that's in that per diem manual. Because this is one of the ones we found more often than not, that people just book a hotel and they don't think about the rates, and then they come back later and we've been gouged really by the hotels. Because in many, many cases, you'll have a hotel, if you ask for the state rate, they'll give it to you. If you don't ask for it, they're not going to offer it. So you'll get that booklet. Anybody in your department that travels, you may want them to have that at least that few pages that shows the per diem for hotels. So conference hotels, we have that also in our travel policy, because usually those are a little bit more, because you're in a conference hotel right there. You don't have to travel, you don't have to hire an Uber. So those are usually permitted, but I would ask you to document that it's a conference hotel. And usually you have those book up quickly when you're making your reservations. So they give you a reduced rate. It's either at the state rate or at a reduced rate. So make sure you document in your travel documents that it is the conference hotel and there's a special rate. So business meals and meetings. This is one that the auditors are really starting to crack down on, because after all, when we talk about spending taxpayer money, every one of you in this room is a taxpayer. So if I went out for a steak dinner on your dime, chances are you probably wouldn't really be happy with me unless it was for a legitimate business purpose. So when we talk about having group meetings, certain meetings where you're supplying food of any kind, that needs to be pre-approved by the county manager, just to make sure that we're staying within that realm of business need, business purpose. They even have a time limit. If people if it's less than 4 hours, the state doesn't allow it. So we want to make sure that we aren't getting any of you in trouble for providing coffee, donuts, or bottled water. And I know Michael O'Driscoll can attest to this. When emergency management, they're not even allowed to buy bottled water with their grant funds. So be mindful if you're planning an event where you want food, if you're not paying for it out of your pocket, please speak with us, speak with the county manager, so we can make sure that we keep everybody in compliance with those kind of provisions. When you are having something like that, Supervisor Humphrey, I'm going to pick on you just a little bit.
Please do.
Because I know that we have 2 meetings talking about fire season. We have one up in the north, we have one in the south. Supervisor Humphrey puts that one together in the south, Supervisor Christensen in the north. They typically buy bottled water, maybe a few little snacks, that kind of stuff. The business purpose of that is they're getting all these agencies together in a room. Those agencies are traveling minimum mileage, and it's saving on them spending money to stay in a hotel overnight to have a big gathering. So we are documenting that. This is the first year we're actually putting a piece of paper documenting that business expense of why, that we're providing bottled water, coffee, that kind of stuff. But I guarantee you that he's not buying steak dinners. So when I talk about that, it needs to have an agenda and a specific business purpose. So hopefully that's very clear if we're doing anything where we're buying food using taxpayer dollars. If you want to spend it out of your own pocket, that's great. You know, kudos to you for doing it. But if you're using county funds, grant funds, anything like that, number one, if you're using any kind of grant funds, make sure your grant funds allow for it, and make sure you've documented why you're doing it. So I put up here, some people didn't know the travel form existed. So I'm putting out here so everybody in this room can see what it looks like, and then go back and talk to your folks. And there really is a pre and a post travel form that if you're planning a big trip somewhere, maybe you want to see what the cost is in advance, you know, airfare, hotel, that kind of thing, for a good reason. If we're sending somebody off traveling and they're using a credit card to pay for a hotel, the last thing you want to happen is those guys show up at the counter, hand the credit card, and have the hotel say, "I'm sorry, your card has been declined," like at 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday evening. And that happened, and the reason why is when we all signed up for credit cards, you as elected officials and department directors identified how much people should have on their card and what their daily transaction limits are. If you didn't increase that when these folks are traveling, that's a problem for them when they get at the other end of their destination. So just be mindful of that. Stephanie, if you request that you need that, the daily limit or the monthly limit increased, it's very easy to do, but you need to do that prior to them traveling. So just keep that in mind. So when you're documenting on this travel form, any receipt that you used your credit card for, or you had an out-of-pocket expense that's a legitimate business purpose, you want to make sure that you've attached it to that travel form. So you want airplane receipts, taxi, Uber. If for some reason you don't get a receipt, you can fill out a memo and identify the charge and that the Uber driver didn't give you a receipt, or some reason why you were missing a receipt. All your meal receipts, your hotel receipts, and anything else, parking, that kind of stuff that you would have when you've traveled. And you want to attach them to that form. Once you've filled it all out, you've put all your information on that form and all your documentation, you send it to the person in your organization that's going to approve that. And so the next step there, we'll talk about that as we go a little bit further. We have a new process that we're going to be implementing, hopefully to make it a little bit easier on everybody. But that is the form. This is the back side of the form where you can identify all those purchases and identify any exception to the policies and make sure that you have somebody that's authorized in your department to sign that they've approved for any exception. So the new policy that we're going to roll out March 1st is you're going to fill out that form. Your travelers will fill out that form. They'll attach all their documents. They'll send it to whoever in your organization is the approver. You'll review, make sure they have everything. If they're missing any documentation, you send it back to them and tell them to attach whatever's missing and then send it back. Once you've reviewed it, you guys are going to email it to travel@gilacountyaz.gov. That's a mailbox that's going to come to the finance department. Our staff will review that travel form to make sure that everything is attached, your approval is on it. Once that's already taken care of, if we owe the traveler money, they'll send it to accounts payable to make sure they process that payment to the employee. If there's any money owed to the county, they'll get back to that employee and let them know. Or they'll get back to you and let you know that they've got some overages or something that's missing. But that way we will have all those forms, so when the auditors ask us, as they do every year, we want to see all the travel forms for these individuals, In this case, for 2020, Amber had 160 requests of documentation that they wanted to see. We won't have to bug you for that documentation. We'll have it filed in finance, very easily accessible, so we can get that to the auditors. Is there any question about that new process that's coming to you? We will be sending an email out to elected officials, department directors, that you can forward on to your staff, kind of walking you through that new process. We're hoping that's going to save time on the back end. Included in this PowerPoint, that last highlighted link, that's the link to the state per diem rates. Oh no, I'm sorry about that. That's the travel claim link. So when you get this PowerPoint in your email, it'll have those links in the PowerPoint. So if you send that out to your staff, they're going to be able to click on all these red highlighted links and go to those documents. So I wanted to talk about some of the common issues that we've seen come in with credit card use. One is missing receipts. So if you're spending money and you're going into Works, we have folks that go in, they may or may not reconcile their card. If you don't go in and do anything in the Works Bank of America application, your department is still going to get charged for that. The only problem is it may not be charged to the right place, and you may overrun your operating expenses in certain lines because whoever used the card didn't go and reconcile. If they don't attach the receipts, we have no way of looking to see whether or not that was an appropriate business purpose. So everybody that's using a credit card, when they signed up, they agreed that they would go in monthly and reconcile those charges and provide those receipts. So that's really on your credit card holders to do that. If we see that they're not doing that on a routine basis, we're going to get back to you and let you know. If they continue that, we may have to pull their credit card because they're really not following Gila County policy. And we really don't want to do that because the credit card has been a good tool in travel and in purchases, but it comes with a responsibility. So gratuity mills, if you want to reward somebody because they've done a great job for you, you can take them out on your dime, but you can't take them out on the county credit card. Just, that has happened in the past, but going forward, that's just not going to be allowable. And if we see that, we're going to ask you to reimburse the county. Buying gifts, flowers, that kind of stuff, again, you can take up collections, pay for it out of your pocket, but we can't do that with taxpayer dollars. Expenses over the per diem rates. We're arming you all with information today, so hopefully going forward, everybody's mindful of what those per diem rates are and we stay within that. Using a credit card to fuel personal vehicles or buying fuel for fuel cans and that kind of stuff, you can't use the credit card for fueling personal vehicles. In fact, our fleet and our Public Works Department would encourage you, if you're fueling vehicles, to use the county fuel pumps. If for some reason you're out traveling and you can't get to a county fuel pump, your credit card for a county vehicle is acceptable. But we encourage people to use the county fuel pumps and credit cards for when you're not close by, don't run out of gas, but no fueling personal vehicles. I talked about lack of reconciliation in the credit card application. That really is a big one. Lack of departmental second review. So if I use my credit card and I charge, but the person you designated as the approver doesn't go in and look at it, it's kind of defeating the purpose of having two sets of eyes looking at those purchases. And so misuse could happen if you're allowing your folks to use credit cards and nobody's going in to approve it. So we're relying on whoever your approver is to make sure they're looking, they've got the documentation, they've got the right charge codes, allocation codes, and they've got a specific business purpose. That's our job as managers, to make sure that we're doing that. Any exceptions to the policies, again, need to be in writing, need to be documented. And so those are really the common things that we've seen credit card that we really need to beef up in the coming years to avoid more findings from the state auditor. Did I miss anything? This is my backup singers. If I miss something, hopefully they'll tell me. So I just wanted to, if you hadn't ever gone into the Bank of America application, this is what it looks like. It's a tool, it's online. Everybody that has a credit card, not everybody that has a credit card, but everybody that can approve or review charges has access to this. And those names came from each elected office and department. So this is kind of what the screen looks like. Each one of these are transactions. If you click into the little plus sign, it expands that, so it shows you the GL code. It gives you a place that you can put the specific business purpose. It gives you the place where you can upload receipts. So there's a spot where you're going to identify what that specific business purpose, and in this case, I believe I paid for a membership for somebody, for Mr. Menlo. So that's the specific business purpose. I don't have to write a novel, but it has to be something that will come across that you can understand what the specific business purpose was. So across this application, each one of those boxes is a GL that, just like you would go into New World and look at the GL coding, you can click into each one of those boxes and it'll expand. So if it doesn't have the right coding, you can change that, and then you can save it. There's also a button that allows you to tell us whether or not we should be charging use tax or you've already paid use tax. And you need to make sure that you check that yes or no. That's important because we don't want to pay use tax on items that we've already paid tax. But that's up to your person doing the reconciling to make sure that they've got all that. There's also an upload button where you can upload the document, scan it, upload it into the system. So kind of recapping, I know I've gone through this awfully quick, but really our roles are to understand the policies and what our roles and responsibilities are to the county. We need to make sure that our expenses are approved for business purposes and properly documented. And any exceptions have to have prior approval. That way we all know that it is a legitimate reason for an exception. Travel forms, like I showed you in the PowerPoint, those need to be completed and approved for any travel, and then forward to finance. And we talked about the new process that's going to go into place starting March 1st. Again, I know I'm beating the dead horse talking about exceptions, but any exception needs to be documented and approved. Credit card transactions need to be reconciled on monthly. They need to have a detailed business purpose, and they need to have receipts. They need to be reviewed and approved. And that's the end of my monologue. So I'll open it up to any of you if you have any questions. Supervisor Humphrey.
Like on travel, rather than use the card, just to pay cash and then turn in receipts, is that okay?
You can do that.
And then you would need a comment on what the receipts were for?
You need to stay within per diem rates. So if you paid for your meals with your cash, you need to stay within those per diem rates. If you stayed with your hotel within per diem rates, you need to have a receipt for all those purchases. And yes, we can reimburse you. a lot of folks that travel may not have that cash that where they can just pull it out of their pocket. That's why credit card is a good means for them. But if you use your own cash, yes, we can reimburse you. It gets reimbursed when you turn that travel form in. Any other questions? So I will tell you why I had you sign in, because in our findings and the way we respond back to the auditors, we as finance have to put together kind of an action plan to tell the auditors how we're going to correct these findings. One of those was we're going to do a training with leadership and then flow down that training to departments so that they understand that we have policies and the appropriate use for taxpayer dollars. So anyway, you're the first step in that. So I had you sign in because this is proof going back to the auditors that we did start the training. In my email to you this afternoon, I've asked that you let us know when we can attend your staff meetings, that we can bring this same presentation to them. It may not be everybody in your whole organization, but you may have a select few that do the approving, reconciling, that kind of work. Please let us know when we can attend those meetings, and we'll document that and send those to the auditor as well. So with that, if you have no other questions, I want to thank you for putting up with me for the last half hour. And we've got Maren up next to talk about our upcoming budget. And thank you for being so attentive. Hopefully I didn't put anybody to sleep.
Well, before I get started, why don't you all get up and stretch for a second? I mean, it's a little chilly in here, and you are all...
No jumping jacks?
You know what? I thought about it. While I was sitting back there with Terry, I was thinking, if I make all the elected officials jump up and down, do we sell the YouTube video to make up for tax deficits? And I didn't think you'd like that.
Not in focus.
Okay. That's usually... I'm not focused either. Wait, were you in focus?
I don't know. I couldn't see myself. No, he might do closing remarks.
Okay, this is scary.
I don't know what the camera's problem is right now.
Good? Okay. I'll give everybody a couple minutes.
You can't tell who's on.
Not who's specific, I can tell you how many people are on YouTube.
Do you know who
We were at 15 a minute ago.
Wow.
Still at 15 viewers on
Okay.
YouTube. Nobody's asked any questions. I put a note out there in the chat so they knew they could. But
Sure, Dave goes and turns the lights on.
and that fixed the focus, though. That's,
Oh, did it? Okay. I was wondering if it was me. Oh, my Fitbit's telling me to move around.
If you're attending on YouTube, to email me, let me know you're attending.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can just put it in the chat box on YouTube, probably.
That way I can include them.
That's a great idea.
I remember being here when the walls were finished. Just the beam. Just the beam. And I remember mopping this floor after the rodeo down.
Because we may have people in Payson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And these poor people are just staring at me standing here doing nothing.
Finger puppets.
Yeah, I only know one. It's from learning to drive on the Jersey Turnpike.
So, was I too monologue-ish?
I don't know. I've sat through the presentation a couple times because I read it, and then it's hard for me to tell.
Okay, well,
I think you hit all the important points, and we recorded it, right? So you can show it to
recorded?
you can show it to the auditors. You have proof you did it,
Oh, good.
right?
I should have told Dan Hunt to log in.
He's gonna be here tomorrow. We can give it to him to watch at lunch, and I just added that to the recording because I'm a class act.
No questions.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, if you guys want to get settled back in, we can get started. What? I didn't bring any backup singers.
And your backup singer. You don't need one.
No, boy. After yesterday, I think I do.
They just gotta tell them to come live.
Okay, so first and foremost, we need to thank all of you, everyone in the room, everyone on YouTube, any elected official or department head who watches this video on YouTube later, for really sticking to the 2021 budget. You guys are doing an outstanding job. I have not seen any areas where I've had any concerns when presenting to the Board of Supervisors each month with what your expenditures are, with where your revenues are at. Everyone is doing a great job managing their expectations, making sure that responsible resource management is happening, and communicating with finance to make sure that things are getting done the way they should. Mary just put you all through the ringer on the credit cards, so I won't hit that again, but you may be hearing from Nicole Weaver. She's working on updating any files that might be missing documentation that isn't already compliant with what Mary just went over. So if you hear from Nikki, she's really just acting on our behalf to get that information up to date. Almost all of you should have received an invitation to a Zoom meeting regarding your 2021 or 2022 budget. We have not reached out to elected officials in the courts yet. Those emails will be coming out this week. We do not expect you to have anything prepared for your Zoom meeting. We just expect that at that Zoom meeting, we will talk about what management expectations are and what the goals and targets are for 2022. By the end of next week, you should have your budget files. They will be an Excel spreadsheet like they were last year. You will have your year-to-date budget performance report for both revenues and expenses. You will have what I have as your current position control worksheet. Accuracy thereof is hit or miss. I'm not going to pretend they're perfect. So please feel free to let me know when they're not. And then we will have whatever memo with the bullet points for your 2022 budget are. Just a couple of continuations from last year. As far as I know, there are no new general fund positions available. We are talking about insurance rates and how those will be changing next year. And we are expecting an increase, we just don't know what that's gonna look like for the county and for employees. It is a single-digit percentage increase. So it's not monumental or insurmountable. We are not planning to increase property taxes. We are planning to keep them at $4.19. Paul started our meeting with his box of annual reports. If anybody, especially, this is especially for our electeds, if anyone says to you, hey, my property taxes went up, I encourage you to look at page 6 in that book, or the magazine that Paul has. So if you don't have one, please get one. There's a diagram in there that shows a dollar bill split out with where your tax dollars, right, you're all taxpayers too, where your tax dollars go here in Gila County. About 38 cents of every dollar you pay in comes to the county. The rest of it goes to the special districts and the other areas. And that's at the top of the page. The bottom of the page shows a chart that shows what percentage goes to what aspects of Gila County operations. And about 40% of every dollar we receive in the general fund for property taxes goes to law enforcement, public safety, and court, various court aspects of operating the county and serving our people. So that information's right there, so that you can have that in your hand and just show people, you know, here's the information, just in case anybody has questions. I know sometimes we run into constituents at the grocery store and they all have opinions about how Gila County is running. So that information is there for you. And it's available for anybody that wants an extra copy. And that is really all I have for 2022. We are, just in general, in our first year of a 5-year plan with computer services to make sure that all of our information technology is up to date. The way that we built the 2021 budget was that in a 5-year cycle, all the phones and computers and laptops in the county would be kept up to date. So if your department is having issues with information technology, with the Cisco phones on your desks, whatever those are, please work with Kelly Riggs. He has a budget line item that is not built in his budget, not built in your budget. It's separate countywide to manage those kinds of things. And I'm sure you're all aware that we had the groundbreaking up in Payson yesterday for the complex up there. And we have talked to Fleet about what the anticipated vehicle needs are for 2022. So if your department has a vehicle need that you haven't talked to them about yet, please make sure that you work with them on that. And then long-term, we are aware that the federal minimum wage is expected to go up to $15 an hour by the year 2025. That affects approximately 69 current staff members at Gila County. We have 69 people, which is more than 10% of our staff, make less than $15 an hour right now. So just keep that in mind as you're long-term planning for your department. We will, over the next 4 or 5 years, be trying to ensure that every position is doing as much as it can so that we have the capacity to ensure that those folks who are in those pay grades are able to be elevated to the federal minimum and not create compression upward. But that is going to take us a couple years to make sure that we really get that done. So that is all I have. Our first budget meeting that's not with one of the 3 supervisors or Mr. Menlove is Monday. If you need a change on your calendar or whatever, let me know. I will reach out to electeds in the courts probably tomorrow. And I don't have anything else. Oh, New World is open for your use. If you have questions or issues, let me know. There are no dollars in the current year estimate. We tried that last year and ended up with a lot of edits. So we started everything with 0. When you go into New World, make sure that you are not going into, what was it called, John? Budgets. Budget scenario maintenance, I think, apparently that's a menu option that was made publicly available to all of you and wasn't supposed to be. So be careful. If you get a weird screen that has nothing you recognize on it, give us a call. We'll show you where to go. And we did work with Mary recently to start making training videos. If we find that there's a lot of similar questions, what we'll do is we'll make another video that allows you to just go either on our website or the intranet and find that information. And on that note, there is, for your staff who are doing their 2020 taxes, if they need to get an extra W-2 copy, on the finance page of the Gila County website, there is a video now that will walk them through step-by-step how to get an extra W-2. Probably you won't need that for 2 more months when everybody is scrambling to hit the April 15th deadline. That's all I got, and I just saw Mr. Menlove's car go past the door, so we filled the time. Does anybody have any questions about the 2022 budget or your 2021 progress year to date?
He's in time for closing remarks.
I was really worried I wasn't gonna have enough material to keep you all bored until he got here. I don't know. I guess it's a miracle. We kept everybody bored. And is there anything that you guys, right, this is not a question for now. It's a question for email. If you have questions about how finance does something or how our information gets conveyed to the public or to the Board of Supervisors, please feel free to ask us. We don't know what you're wondering unless you tell us. Unfortunately, we are not psychic. Even though we got put on the hot seat yesterday at the Board of Supervisors meeting hoping that we were. We do not have a crystal ball. It is broken. So that's all I've got. I will hand it back over to Mary, who I believe has a puppet show for until James gets here. Oh, there he is.
No puppet show.
No puppet show. We have the county manager. So I will,
I'm not going in there.
I'm gonna hit the power switch on this. And you guys can stretch your legs until Mr. Menlove is ready. I don't know why I kept looking like I had a power switch.
No screen.
I had one planned. I just didn't feel like torturing everybody with it.
You got 2 cents?
Oh,
No, I was gonna say.
So this budget scenario just appeared out of nowhere? You're good. Nobody really knows the answer. I don't think. Okay. Okay. No hurry. I got so many things on the to-do list that honestly I was thinking that you were
Hi everybody, sorry, I am.
We need you behind the podium for the YouTube video.
Yeah, they're filming you.
Everybody wants to see your face, so. There you go.
That's scary. Thank you for coming, I'm surprised there's so many here, but I shouldn't be. So thank you for coming. I don't know what any of the content has been. I was in a meeting talking about bringing training and for our employees and how we can better help our employees to progress through our county and move along. So, you've done the roundtable?
No, that we haven't done.
If we're going to do the roundtable, I have 2 questions that I want you to answer. Besides bringing up anything that you have, and somebody over there is taking notes. Sherry? Thank you. Of roundtable, talk about any issues you might have. And then secondly, what is the one thing that if you could, you would fix for Gila County? What is the thing that we have that we need to put as administration, as a county, as all of us, what is the one thing that we should put our efforts to fix? And there's no restrictions on what it might be. That's, this is out of the box comments. And then secondly, we have, are losing some of our senior people at Gila County. Our HR director, her last day is Friday. And we've got Julie here, so thank you, Julie. Julie's taking the brunt and picking up everything, so we appreciate Julie of stepping up and stepping in to take this on to help us out during this time. For HR, we're not quite sure what the exact plan is. So, but we've got a pro and an expert that's very good. Lost our community development director that has retired. And 8 months ago, what is it, Steve, that we lost our county engineer and have not been able to fill that position. So there's some positions, we're having a real hard time filling certain spots. And I don't know if that's across all departments or whatever, but is there something that we can do as a county to fill these positions that we have? So what can we do to fix? And you don't have to be limited by, well, we don't have any dollars. I like to move around on There you go. So what do you have that you fix? No restrictions, no limitations on what the ideas are. And then why are we not able to attract some of these positions, and or what can we do more to fill positions with the county? So we're going to start superintendent of schools. And so I'm going to take this microphone and go around. Is that okay? I had a mask somewhere. Oh, well. Oh, here it is. Speak loud. This is for the world to hear.
Thanks, Nick. No problem. Our office, the current issue we have is we pay our positions so little that if they find a job that's $13 an hour, they'll bail on us because it's that much more than what we can pay. Other than that, it's good. We just got to be able to keep them.
Okay, so low wages. So you're not competitive.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Well, they can almost go to McDonald's.
Okay, I see what our competition is.
Yeah.
So, we did a salary survey, I think it's been 2 years ago, that we did a salary survey 2 years ago that we got supposedly our salary is competitive. But if there's more agreements with you, we have already gotten to the point 2 years later that we are not competitive. McDonald's pays more than we pay some of our staff. So what is an issue that you would fix in the county? Just the pay? A twofer?
Give you a twofer.
Okay. All right. Health department.
I would say one of the biggest things for me is if we could grow our own nurses or grow our own managers from the bottom up and offer some sort of a stipend to move up into the higher level positions. Also offering reimbursement for schooling or allow for a preceptor program, having someone to be able to go to school, because you got to go full-time sometimes with nursing, but do a 50-50, letting them go to school and get the education so we can move them into the position and actually have them sign a contract so they stay with us longer and it'll give you retention. So, but competitively it is hard to fill when you're not competitive with the local. You may have been competitive with the counties around or a county of the same size, but with federal increasing and currently lots of bonuses for nurses for me.
So, grow our own, which is actually something we have been considering and talking about at length, that is what we need to do, and to get into the high schools, sophomore, junior level, and that's what my meeting was where I was at, is talking about that, of getting into schools, providing a path that we can do internships, that we can do tuition reimbursement or something like that. We are going to rewrite the entire HR policy manual, and definitely target is to have that done by the end of June for our new HR policy manual, and to include in that internships, scholarships, tuition reimbursement, however we go about that, and then to introduce getting into the schools, the high school, because if we can get a local kid to come and work for the county, like Miss Grice, that's a fabulous example that she's started out as a summer youth employment program here at the county. And I'm thankful for Sherry very much. So some of that kind of stuff. Now, if you guys, as you're making these comments, if you want to, if I'm missing stuff or whatever, send me and Sherry a note or something, and if we want to, that is definitely a big issue, so we want to address that. Elections.
So, on top of that, the intern program that we had in the last couple of years, our elections department, we were fortunate to have the same returning, one of them in our department, and he was very adept at the position, and it would have been nice if we could keep him on. But unfortunately, we don't have, like was also brought up, the education opportunities to make people stay so that they can make themselves more marketable, not just outside of outside the county workforce, but to laterally transition to other positions within the county, that they had the education opportunities. Once they get in with the pay rates that we have, and they're not going to be able to make any opportunities to get themselves more education with what they have available. So it kind of keeps them in a dead-end type of situation. But a lot of them are a lot capable to do more, but they just don't have those opportunities. That's kind of like the issue that if we could fix internally by helping them with educational programs and additional training, because we often ask them on their performance evaluations, what are your goals, what are your plans? But there's nothing there for them to be able to realize those plans and those goals that we ask them to make. That's just kind of like we're just asking them to fill out a piece of paper and make that suggestion, but we can't really follow up with it for them. That's about it.
Okay. All right, thank you, Eric. A path to go. I feel like employees, they either have to have a challenge and something to motivate them, to keep them going. Otherwise they're just going to come and put a butt in a seat and sit there, and that's about all we get out of them. If they don't have a path, don't have a way to go. So We want to look at and consider internal training. I had a former boss that always talked about succession planning. And as soon as you got the succession plan in place and your replacement was in place, he wanted to boot the incumbent out. I don't believe in that. I believe in having good, competent, well-trained people. So that's what we've got to work towards and do. So, is that about covered, Eric? Okay. Mr. Constable.
Let me pick the worst one. Well, living down in the cellar, I very rarely go around to everybody else's departments. But I was under the same impression as,
There's a reason you're down in the cellar.
I know. That way it can come up. But I was more or less with the superintendent of schools on the employees, on funding and pay, because I noticed that there are a lot of employees that are below the minimum wage that's going to be coming up in 2025, I believe you said. We're gonna try to get it up to $15 an hour. And the way it is right now, a lot of them are, like you said, just barely making it. And it's pretty sad when some of them might qualify for food stamps and they work for the county. So, yeah, that's one of the issues that is facing the county, is keeping employees in that part of it. Another one is, when you mentioned something about HR and the policy manual, is that going to include also job descriptions? Do we know?
No.
That's not going to include job
No.
descriptions?
No.
We don't want to open up that kind of worms.
No, if there's a change in the job description, we need to have accurate job descriptions, because now with our performance evaluation tool that we have, that is supposed to be in as a part of the evaluation. And if we're not having an accurate description of what your job is, then you cannot be evaluated on it. So a current, accurate job description, and Julie may shoot me, but we look at those as often as we can. But you need to initiate it. We're not going to go out and to you and say, how's your job description? As a director or elected official in charge of a department, that is incumbent on each of you in your departments. Okay?
Well, I'm not done yet, so.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I figured not.
on some of these areas where you're unable to fill a position, like you said, the engineer, county engineer, are you doing searches that are statewide or nationwide? I don't know.
We have not been very
Successful?
We recently went to Indeed. We recently went to Indeed, and if you pay on Indeed, you have no cost. It gives like a 50-mile circle. So that means we're promoting for a county engineer just in this area. So we need to expand to at least statewide and that. So that's what we're doing with the county engineer and a few select positions. So we're trying to at least get statewide. And we need to, working with Julie, will retool how we are recruiting, and all that needs to be looked at because we're not being successful. And maybe it's just wages, but there's a lot of factors in that. So I'm surprised. Judge?
We've already discussed this, you already, no surprises here. Gonna mirror this, I suspect you're gonna have the same mirror throughout the room, wages. 6 of my employees are gonna be affected with those 69 that you indicated, we need to plan for in 2025. Additionally, the tuition reimbursement, which was also touched on, and we have talked about that as an offering to employees. I came from the previous employer was the city of Tempe, and we had cohort programs where there was a true no out-of-pocket cost to an employee because they just believed in investing in their employees and that growing them here at home. So when you provide their opportunities, you may have a lesser wage, but when you factor in the $6,500 a year that they were paying, the programs that covered the entire cost. So I I mean, if money's no object, those are my two things. And then maybe the third in terms of salary is if we had a true step increase, not just what's advertised, but something that we could commit to and budget for the reality that, hey, we're going to get you. I know that if I'm an employee here for 9 years, in 9 years I'll be making X amount of dollars. Whereas, you know, I think the story's repeated everywhere as well. You know, some of us have employees that have been here for 20 or 30 years, and they've still not even skimmed the surface of their pay range. So.
Thank you, Judge. I am not an advocate for steps because that limits and restricts the annual budgeting. Because then you're keyed in and tied in and our revenues fluctuate up and down. And so we've got to talk more about that and take a look at what we can do. But just personally, I'm not an advocate of steps. Because we're just like committing money on out in the future that we may not have. So I think one of the big problems, we didn't have any raises this year, so we don't know what's coming up. We already said when she's got her, she said she's got this great crystal ball and told the board yesterday she knows everything. Public fiduciary.
The only thing I'd like to add to what everyone's talking about is talking about the salaries. I think no matter what, you should always get a cost of living raise. I mean, regardless of what's going on in the county, this affects everybody in their living situation. So I think employees should always get a cost of living raise, even when the county is having financial problems, which is what COVID happened. I have a couple employees that work their butts off getting their degree. They've gotten masters.
That was too radical. That was too radical.
This isn't Star Wars, can you? Maybe we just pull the batteries out of that one and put it in the other one.
Go ahead. We'll just have to read the lips.
I'll get a little closer.
So I just think that on top of working, they end up getting their degrees. They both got masters. You know, they're not getting compensated for that. And they had to pay for their own schooling. And I think some county employees have gotten things like that paid for. But they've had to pay for every dime of theirs. And I just think sometimes they're working to someday be the director of this department. And I don't know that there's there's nothing that keeps them here. I feel like now that they have their degrees, they're gonna go somewhere else. So that's what I think is a problem.
Okay. People that are advancing themselves, they get no support from the county to advance themselves. And then after they've invested in themselves to do it, there's no path, no way for them to be rewarded for that their self-motivation and self-improvement, kind of like that. Clerk of the board.
Thank you. Just all the comments I've heard thus far, I totally agree with. And to add on to what Tiffany said, when somebody gets a degree, you know, it's a great effort on their part personally. So I agree with tuition reimbursement, having a policy for that and a program in place. But I do think maybe one thing HR could do is maybe all departments can monitor their employees, and when they get a degree, notify HR. And then when there's an opening in a department or elected office, not just do the succession planning, so you have someone that can move up within your department or elected office, but maybe HR would say, wow, I have somebody who, you know, majored in this, they just got their degree, they might be a good candidate. So it's sharing that information across the county.
Yeah.
And as far as attracting senior people, I don't know if this is done. I know through County Supervisors Association, sometimes you know about few people, you know, you share information in county managers meetings. But maybe there could be some site where all Arizona counties could share their job postings. And it's not about taking away from another county, it's about getting the best person for the position.
I know the League of Arizona Cities and Towns has a job posting site, so.
Okay, and there's, Missy wanted to just highlight a couple issues in the department that's.
Missy?
Thank you. I'm Timmy Tully, I'm unrelated. Some of the issues that we have in our department is basically participation and utilization of the agenda quick system. For the last year, it's been declining rather badly as far as agenda review participation, staff reports and contracts and everything, or even IGAs or agreements or grants have been, it's been really hard for us to keep up with them because we've had to go in and correct them a lot more than we used to have to. And so we're actually doing double time the work. So what I'm asking is for everyone to please review your items, help us out, because there's only me and Marion, and we don't have all that time in order every 2 weeks to throw in an agenda and having to redo 3/4 of the agenda prior to it even becoming finalized. So for us, that's critical. And then also, I think the thing that we could actually do a lot better on is communication within the departments. If you have a problem, call. If you have an issue, call. If you respond, you know, that's one of the big things too, is we can send out emails and we're not getting responses. So I think that is a huge key within all departments, no matter what you're doing, is that if you guys can communicate with each other and all of us, then I think it'll run a lot smoother.
All right, thank you, Ms. C. You want to make comments?
I have an idea.
Okay, good.
Luckily for us in facilities, we don't have any open positions at this time. The one idea I was thinking of is Gila County as a whole, trying to, when you were saying like recruiting, like statewide, whatever, a lot of people have never heard of Gila County, never heard of Globe. And I know like Paul and Jackie were working on the Discovery Gila County website. And that's what I was thinking of, like letting people know about Gila County. It's a great place to live, it's a great place to raise your family. Just kind of promoting it out there, trying to get more lucrative people in here to work for us and just promote ourselves not only as an employer, but that it's a great place to live.
That is absolutely true. There is so much to offer in Gila County. I talked to a person yesterday about how can we increase our exposure, maybe through, I know some municipalities have a cable TV channel or a YouTube channel, and so we're going to set up a meeting here to explore that further in the next few weeks, because it is, like you say, trying to increase exposure in every way that we can. So, great idea. I don't know if I should give it to you.
I just have one comment for, we're talking about growing our own earlier in the conversation. And I think, you know, with our summer youth program that we have, I think it's very important that all departments and electeds take part in that. And that's a start to growing our own.
Great, thank you, Sherry. I thought she said she was going to say her boss is an idiot. And the biggest problem is we need to get rid of him.
Kind of feel like I'm beating a dead horse here because it's no different for us at the sheriff's office. One of our biggest issues is attracting and retaining qualified employees, especially for our patrol positions, our detention staff, where a lot of times when you do get those employees that you can get trained, especially the younger ones, they tend to want to go to the bigger agencies, they want to live in the valley, they want more opportunities outside of the work environment. So we do see a lot of people that work in the area from, say, the Queen Creek area, Pinal County, down in that area. But with those agencies down there being a lot more competitive, not only with pay, just, you know, the general environment that they're in and opportunities to promote throughout, we have a hard time. For example, when we do attract those employees, it's just retaining them because they'll come in for, you know, 2 or 3 years, get some experience, and, you know, jump to another agency where they can make much more money and have better benefits. DPS, for example, we're always competing, you know, with the local agencies, but you have the Pinal counties, for example, that allow their employees to drive their company cars into Gila County, live in Gila County, and then drive back for work. So that's one thing we compete with. So like I said, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse as far as, you know, what we're looking at, but it's one of our biggest issues.
And speaking with the sheriff, I think that you're able to get people in so that the starting pay range, the starting pay is good, but there's, as has been commented, there's nowhere to go. There's, within a couple, 2 or 3 years, we're lagging behind what other agencies. Great. So, Mr. Health Director, thank you for all you do.
Thank you, James. Just piggybacking on Mike Johnson's comments, I think one of the issues to keep and attract people to Gila County that we're finding from the employees we're interviewing is the housing issues down in the southern area. With there's not a lot of good housing opportunities here. And if you drive through Miami and certain parts of the globe, you can certainly see some of the dilapidated structures and things like that. So from the health department's perspective, what I've seen over those several years is the infrastructure for buildings, like our animal shelter and our buildings that we're in operating on. But that's being taken care of. So thank you and the current board, along with Tommy Martin. If you came in here, you see that the county is building a new animal shelter. The old one was falling down. It had sewage issues. It had health issues all along. So I've seen an improvement in the county administration moving to taking a look at those ideas, and with the groundbreaking of it pacing, that's certainly great news. I used to, again, have issues with the finance department, Mary, but you've handled that. Our procurement process, it used to take me months and months to get a contract out. It takes a matter of just a couple weeks. Thank you and your staff for improving that process. We have contracts all the time, and it used to take 8 to 10 months about 6, 7 years ago, before you became the finance director. And between you and Mary, that's really been extremely helpful. So I've seen many improvements on the internal processes. And then just a quick update on COVID. We're moving to opening the vaccinations to all residents of Gila County. So I'm extremely excited because we're the first county in Arizona to do that. So if you still need your vaccine, you're more than welcome to come up to Payson next weekend and get the vaccine.
And that's an appointment?
We have 5 or 6 different call center numbers. You can, you need an appointment, just give one of those numbers a call. We posted that today, and we'll make an appointment, and hopefully we'll get the vaccines delivered so we won't have to cancel it, because the Midwest is having it some terrible storms, so it may delay the vaccine, but keeping my fingers crossed.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I don't know if you noticed when you drove in, down in the bowl by the go-kart track is Michael's new animal shelter. It's a nearly $3 million facility that we're proud of, and it looks fantastic, so.
On budget, sir.
Yeah. Public Works.
Thank you. Finding people. We probably have 10, 12 open positions right now. Had a public works supervisor, road supervisor turn in a retirement letter yesterday. Have the general services manager retiring in March and the landfill recycling manager in June. So and we're not finding replacements. We're trying to split up duties and take people internally and start training them. Maybe we don't have one that can do it all, but divide duties amongst 2 or 3 just to keep functioning. To Mr. Monch's question about the county engineer, we started local through the county website, the Arizona Association of Counties, Arizona Association of County Engineers. Had no luck there, reached out to, I believe, the Arizona Republic, newspaper in Tucson, newspaper in Flagstaff. No responses, extended searches to this Indeed where now we're paying and we're starting to get some, but it's people from all over the world. I guess they click on it and they just submit an application or their resume. It's not real detailed, but we are starting to get some. And we're finding when we do interview people, it's 50-50 whether they'll accept the offer or not. So we used to would get excited when we found enough people to interview, and now we interview and we don't know if they're going to accept. So challenges all the way around.
Thank you, Steve. Facilities, Karen.
What we're looking at is developing some sort of recommendation for career ladder based on not time. That's the way we're all hooked into this right now. We've all been here 10 years. We're vested in the SRS and everything else. You're talking about people that leave. It's easy to leave after 3 years. You're not vested. You don't see what the end game is. A lot of times governments don't really do a good job promoting how good a job this is. In the end, when you're done, if you want to develop your competencies, and this is my idea, is that we develop competencies, and it's not based on how long you're here. It's based on, your real job career ladder, and I know that's a iffy name for everybody in HR, is based on what you can do for us, not how long you've been here. And there's nothing wrong with a lunch pail guy that comes in and does his work every day and works all 8 hours every day and goes home. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to lead, if you want to improve yourself, that should be important. It's difficult because you start passing over people and feelings get hurt when you start making those changes, but I think it's a pathway to success. And you show the world that, hey, look, this is the way we reward our employees, and word gets out. Maybe it's just locally first, but certainly awards start coming at the NACO level and things like that for that, and you start getting some recognition that you can market yourself on. And one thing that we're working on also as a department is communicating better with other departments, because we're always in your offices. And what we want to do is not only just hear from you when you need something from us or we need to check something from you as we're in there being invasive. We want to have an honest communication with each and every one of you. To that end, we have leadership meetings much like this every 2 weeks. And we started this last week with bringing in, trying to get either directors or someone from high level from the department to come in and talk with us. To the end of one thing, how do we work together? how well do we work together, but secondly, a lot of what we wanted to talk about was with the IT, which didn't happen, but what, was how can we use you to make our people better? Because we hear it all the time. I'd like to get better at Excel. I'd like to get better at being able to communicate on the computer. That's great. We can do that internally, and we can set up some sort of curriculum doing that with HR, with our supervisors. I mean, some of the scariest stuff is always how do you deal with employees that aren't performing. And that kind of communication and that kind of curriculum that we can maybe bring into our office would really help.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm going to go around the rest of the room and then come back to them. Julie.
Sure. Well, as you all know, Shelley is retiring. Her final day is on Friday. Well, we, of course, are very sorry to see her go. Fingers crossed for a great new director, right? That's the wish. And I hate to be this person, but I have to agree with Mr. O'Driscoll. We have housing issues here. We don't have rentals. We're landlocked, so there's nowhere to build homes. Unfortunately, we had another point with people driving to the dilapidated neighborhoods. So it's not uncommon to hear that an applicant will bring their family here, and as they drive through town, the wife will say, I am not moving here. And they turn down the job. So I think housing would be the one thing I would want to fix. Additionally, though, as far as finding people filling positions, we don't have enough for youth to do either. So there's that portion of it. And then obviously there's better opportunities for youth in the valley and the bigger school districts, that type of thing. So community beautification would be a good thing. And I know there's a couple of positions that are opening that will do that type of work. Interestingly enough, there's some community partners that are putting in money for a couple of people to go and clean alongside the road, and I think that's going to be wonderful. It's going to be absolutely wonderful, and I think that will help. But unfortunately, it's not just a dollar issue, it is also a location issue. So, thank you.
Thank you, Julie. In reference to what Julie was mentioning there, we had a meeting with several partners, potential partners.
Model in my mind to keep employees motivated. We have some staff that are superstars and they get the same raises as the people who do the minimum, and that's okay, because it's a raise and it's something, but pay for performance is an important thing, at least in my world. And then healthcare, benefits for healthcare, and I understand we're a rural county and we're combined with other rural counties to get our healthcare benefits. It's a pretty big deal for some families, especially those that have family members that have health conditions. It can cost them a lot of money for health care. So that's always something that I know is a challenge in all counties. We lose staff to federal probation in Maricopa County. Our probation officers are all degreed. You need a bachelor's degree to be a probation officer. I'm not sure if a lot of people know that. But Payton's cost of living is different than the cost of living in Globe. So in Globe you can't find housing, in Payton you can't afford housing. So I have a lot of officers that go to Maricopa. When they do that, they see that Maricopa probation pays $12,000 a year more than Gila County across the board, not at entry level. They're only about $7,000 higher at entry level, and their benefits are extraordinary. You can actually afford their health savings account, which is it's an extraordinary program if you can afford it. So that's pretty much it for my comments. I'll let my judge and my court administrator talk about the real important things.
Thank you, Chief. Clerk of the court, Andy.
Thank you. I have to echo just what everybody else has said about the salary and retention. I find that a lot of my staff, they're local, and they don't go to other businesses in the area. They go to other departments within the courthouse, within the Gila County government. And I suspect I know why that is. But again, I think it's the wages and the retention, trying to keep them and compete with other county departments. You know, I always have the competition with other businesses in Hewitt County, but I think my biggest one is just with other departments within the organization.
Okay, thank you. One thing, I'll start off with one thing to fix, and that'd be north facilities, and it's something we can continue, fortunately. It's not something out of the blue. We saw our groundbreaking yesterday. I'm excited about just the multiple projects we have up there. So it's one thing that we can continue working on, not a brand new thing for you. As far as filling positions, our group is one of the groups that steals some of the needs people, a lot of them. But the reality is when we're filling positions, it's a competition. And I think you have to look at us at a competitive level. Obviously, dollars is a big thing. The reality is, if you look at our minimum wage, folks, the legal minimum wage in Arizona has gone up 20-some% in the last 2 or 3 years. I don't think our entry-level positions have gone up that amount. And I think the practical minimum wage in Arizona is, in a lot of places, is not $12 an hour. It's $13, $12.50. It's more than that. So from the bottom, we're seeing that pressure. From the upper side, there's the political pressure that government employees shouldn't make that much money. I know when I worked for the town of Payson, retirees up there, they retired 25 years ago in upper level management. We're making $42,000 a year, and that's what upper level management's worth. You know, and so that's the constraint that the board has, that James has, that our taxpayers have on the other side. Other factors on
We lost the mic.
Battery goes out.
It's battery.
Okay, battery, I'll talk louder. The other thing on the competitive side is when folks, most households now are 2 family or 2 spouse working, and we don't always have the second option. If one of Steve's probation officers moves to Maricopa County, his or her spouse can easily find another job in the Phoenix metro area. As we're looking for an HR director, there's a good possibility that his or her spouse is going to want a job in the same area, and finding that second job is tough. And then third, like I've been around Gila County. Number one, I'm not sure. Gila County is a great place to play. It's a great place to retire. I intentionally moved here 25 years ago, but I think I'm the exception. I don't think there's a lot of folks that say, I'm living in downtown Phoenix, I want to move to Gila County. They love coming here to play every weekend, but they want to be able to go to any coffee shop, any restaurant. They don't realize an hour and a half you can be anywhere you want to be, but they don't want to take that. And it comes back to amenities. There are some folks that have medical issues. I think we have great baseline coverage here in Gila County, but if you need specialty medical coverage, you're still an hour and a half from that specialty. I think it's more like the baton.
Yeah. John?
I only have one thing. I won't
Speak
touch
loudly.
it. I'll try.
You can pull that.
I just have one item. The one thing I'd fix, I don't have anything to add to the staffing items. One thing I'd fix is technical infrastructure. I think that at least in the courts, we run analog, we run digital, we have all kinds of stuff going on. And our demands to put on virtual hearings existed before COVID, and we felt we were inadequately equipped to do that at that point. So I think an overhaul so that we knew that our phones worked and our tech is going to work and we can hold our hearings. Maybe it's time for those kind of considerations. I understand the 5-year rotation of equipment. Kelly's covered all that stuff with us before, but just the entire infrastructure package as a whole. I would like to see that.
So like all of our servers and
I'm thinking
that we're not safe enough that we can continue to operate in an outage. There's going to be some outage.
Sure, I would definitely steer away from attempting a technical answer. But I think it's all of those components, not necessarily servers. I think we're in really solid ground as far as that area.
Security-wise, we are, but your servers are coming up on that 5-year period. He's on different servers than the rest of us.
He's got to go through the courts.
Yeah.
But even the internet backbone too. I mean, it goes back all the way to there. Are you talking?
Yeah, just all of those components that you have to operate modern government organizations nowadays.
Okay, great, thank you. Anything else that anybody thought of? I didn't get you two. You already talked. Mary? All right. One thing that, one of the technology, I feel, just maybe my opinion, that we don't interface with the public as well as we should, and allowing taxpayers to pay taxes online, be able to take care of business online, so that we don't have to have, we're trying to learn through COVID here how to do that, and having restrictions on letting people into buildings and that, but I think we need to get more of an interface with the public, and so that is definitely an item. I'm talking about what you had, Darren, that I came from in a different life where we had developed a leadership academy, and so a series of classes that cover most of the whole year of what you need to do to be a manager, a leader, a supervisor of people, and what you need to understand of how counties work and how many components and pieces there are, how they fit together, those kinds of things that you may think you're just in a small department, 10 people, but there's almost 600 people that make up the county. Talk about the animal facility in Pace, and I wanted to ask you, Judge, in my opinion, when we get this facility, it's 11,000 square feet that's going up in Pace, and it'll house the superintendent of school, head office, the treasurer, the recorder, and the assessor. With the recorder, it'll include an early voting secure area for them. It's got a multi-purpose room that can seat 250 and can convert from like a board chambers, planning and zoning commission meeting to a jury trial. So we're going to have that capability in Payson for jury trials, and then a fairly large, about 2,000 square foot, large multi-purpose room that we can have community functions and whatever we want to there. So, Judge, put you on the spot. In my mind, we're to a point where we're delivering services. What else did you have in mind?
No, I would say the thing we lack right now is that, but we're on that track.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying, I'm saying it's a positive thing. Up throw out something we need, but you got it. If it comes to fruition like we think, in 24 to 36 months, I think we'll be saying, wow, we're set. Because you're right, I think long term, even as our population grows, I don't think we necessarily need more and more facilities. Because hopefully we can utilize technology, and maybe some of the thing with our employees is we need to say, over the next 20 years, we're going to increase our employees' numbers that amount. We're going to increase the amount we pay them by that amount, so we can have the same number, just a little bit of an increase, but pay everybody more. We can build on technology.
Yeah. One of those thoughts that has come up is to pay everybody more. Maybe we identify our top people, and we're going to fill those positions with top-notch people that really work hard to do their jobs. And maybe we have a few less positions. So that's a consideration, that to get that pile of money, pay people more, maybe to reduce the number of employees that we have in the county. So, any comments along there? One thing left in Payson is remodel of the sheriff's office. That is a woeful place. I don't think, Chief, that you have any issue with me saying that, because it's bad indeed. So that is still on the agenda and still working towards that. So don't worry about that. Lastly, I did what Marion, might have been you that mentioned about, Tiff, might have been you that mentioned about the cost of living. Cost of living, I don't know what we're looking at for raises, for money to pay people in the coming year. We have gotten tonight, just as you said, Tiffany, like a 2.1% cost of living that we had for this year that we should have given. And my opinion is that before we do anything else for performance pay, that we need to go catch up with that 2.1%. And if we could do more, catch up with whatever the cost of living is for this year. So you don't want to get behind, just as you say, Kitty. So thank you for that comment. And finally, with regard to pay, we do a new performance system, and we did it so that most everybody got the 2%. But then there was like 15 people that were talking, that were the 5s, that got 3%, about 15 people that got 2.5%, and on the bottom end, about 15 people that got 1%, and another 15 that got 1.5%. All the rest, except for those 60, got 2% raises the last time we gave performance. So one thing I've thought about, and I've actually brought up and discussed, is instead of giving across the board by individual, you guys know your departments, your people, who's working. One of my thoughts and intents maybe is to give each department a certain sum of money. And then the sheriff or department director, Steve, or whoever it might be, allocates that. There was one department small department that had 3 of their staff members, and so there's 15. One small department take up 20% of those 15, because they all got 5s by one department. Because, well, one of the contentions was that, well, this person shows up on time. And, you know, if you're hourly, you got to show up on time. It's just, but that was a reason for giving a 5 to a person. So, thoughts on lump sums to departments, which would be like a lump sum for the entire court system. Lump sum for the entire health department, sheriff's office. Thoughts? Bad idea? The bad side of that, the downside of that is that
There's got to be really heavy review from HR on that. I mean, you have departments that are real close knit, and sometimes there's feelings that come out of that. I've worked with and have been an employee and a manager deciding who was going to get what. So you have to have everything nailed down from the beginning in your department, and then at some point there's got to be, compensation or HR really has to.
So I was just going to say that is the downside, is that the perception is, whether it's real or not, the perception is that the boss, Steve, has certain favorites that are his drinking buddies. Well, he doesn't drink it so much.
I might start if we do that.
There's no perfect compensation or this type of thing. That also though assumes that every department is performing at the same level. And if we're a normal organization, there's going to be some of our departments or elected official groups that are performing at a higher or lower level. So you don't incentivize a department as a whole to rise. We can do that other ways, but that's just one factor.
Okay. Anybody else? Comments on that thought? Good or bad? Bad thing to do? It's got to be well defined.
Certainly worth exploring.
Certainly worth exploring. Okay. Anything else? Thank you, Judge. I have been thinking about our departments, our offices. I think that this group here is outstanding. That we have elected officials that their jobs are important to them, devoted. Whereas some elected officials in other counties, I think they only have to come into the office once a month. They take advantage of that and only come into the office for a few minutes once a month. This group is awesome. And if I had to choose what department is better than another or an office. I don't know, because there's a lot of good people, throughout Gila County. There are some that don't, fill the seat, but not many. So, and that's up to each of you, your leadership and what you provide to the county. Makes my job very easy. Besides, all I do is listen to Sharon. She tells me where to go, what to do, and when to do it. So.
I've been finance, they write the checks.
Okay, nothing else to close? Do we have anything else?
No, we're good.
Is that our roundtable? Have any comments they had? Okay, thank you, everybody.
Do we have any
Appreciate all
comments
your
on-
work.